Hey y'all, I'm live. I'm a little early. Let me just set up this live stream real quick. Hey Tyrell, thanks for joining me. Hope everybody is doing well on this lovely Sunday afternoon. And I know a lot of y'all had to turn your clocks back, right, for the whole daylight savings time ending. I'm in Arizona, so we don't have to adjust our clocks, but I still have to adjust my meeting times with my students and then, with scheduling readings and all that. Mm, mm, mm. All right, like I said, I'm just going to set up this live stream real quick. Let's see who we got in here. We got Renee, Alex. Hey, Alex. Hey, Adora. Tyrell, I already saw you. Kim, Zen Girl, what's up? Sarah, hey. Hey, iShine. Thanks for joining me early, y'all. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, let me upload the thumbnail. Happy Scorpio season. Happy birthday to all the Scorpios. Hey, Kauai. Thanks for joining me. Hey, Tushy Time. I like your name, Tushy Time. Is it getting cool where you're at? Are you starting to need a sweater or a jacket? Where I'm at, it's still not cool yet. It's starting to get cool at night, but you could still wear shorts and tank tops and flip-flops. Hey, contemplating key. All right, I'm almost done setting it up. Strike it up. I feel it, yeah. Well, I feel it. All right, let me get this on. And keep it standing on. Strike it up. Now, what is this leaderboard? This is new on YouTube. I don't know what this leaderboard is. Let me see what it is. They're saying leaderboard shows the top 50 viewers who've been most engaged in the community during your live stream. Okay. If I have the time and you have the base. All right, let me see. Hey, Naru, how you doing? Sarah said it's cold as fuck where I'm at. All the leaves are off the trees. All the leaves are brown. All the leaves are brown. And the sky is gray. And the sky is gray. I've been on a walk, been for a walk on a winter's day. On a winter's day. I'd be safe and warm if I was in LA. California dreaming on such a winter's day. All right. You said, I believe the person who comment that most in the chat. Yeah. So that's what leaderboard means. All right, let's get it started. I'm not going to tarry too long because I got a lot to do. So I'm trying to get this live stream in about 2 hours time. So without further ado, let me share my screen and we're going to get right into it. As you can see from the title, this video is about this woman from years ago, many years ago, because she was born in 1876. But she was a controversial figure. Very interesting story. And before my client sponsored this video, I never heard of her. Like the name rang a bell when he mentioned her, but I was unfamiliar with her story. So this is a interesting reading I'm doing because I basically learned about her for the first time. And her name is Mata Hari. That's her stage name. So let me know. I know there's only a few of y'all in here right now, but have you ever heard of Mata Hari? Press one if you ever heard of her. All right, let me see what y'all are saying. Hey, Shine Star, you're a shining star, no matter who you are. I said the same thing, Shine Star. I was like, that name is familiar, but I wasn't familiar with her story. Shining bright, you see what you could truly be. Shining star for you to see what your life can truly be. Shining star for you to see what your life can truly be. My voice is kind of hoarse. It's still early for me. I'm a night owl, so you're gonna have to forgive me. But we're gonna work it out. So Matahari, dangerous liaisons. That's what I decided to call this. Dangerous liaisons. Because this was a woman that got caught up in some dangerous liaisons that actually cost her her life. She had a short life, a rather short life, and it was due to the dangerous liaisons that she found herself in. So I'm going to read a little bit about her before getting into her chart. So this is from grunge.com. The crazy real life story of Mata Hari. Beautiful, provocative, and dangerous. Well, I would say that beautiful is questionable. That's, argue. Anyway, we could say attractive. Let me stop. Beautiful, provocative, and dangerous. Mata Hari has gone down in history as the femme fatale du jour of World War One. It was a story made for Hollywood, and Greta Garbo's portrayal of Mata Hari in her namesake 1931 film further cemented her dangerous temptress status in the cultural consciousness. Mata Hari doubtless checks many of the boxes of the classic archetype. She was exotic and alluring, a promiscuous dancer, a courtesan, a divorcee, and a seductive spy. Now, courtesan, that's a fancy term for prostitute. But that isn't Hari's whole story. She was a battered wife, a grieving mother, and a romantic and at times desperate woman. Hari was also a scapegoat and a warning, her tragic story serving as an example of what might happen if your morals were too loose, according to biographer Julie Wheelwright. There is so much more to her tale than you've ever imagined. This is the crazy real life story of Mata Hari. Mata Hari wasn't always the famous seductress she was fated to become. In fact, the first dozen years of her life were comfortable but relatively unremarkable. She was born in Leeuwarden, Netherlands on August 7th, 1876, to Adam and Antje Zell. Her parents christened her Margaretha Gertruda Zell, and she went by the nickname Greta or Gretha for years before she adopted her legendary stage name. Adam Zell was a successful hat merchant, Adam Zell being her father, And the family was financially well off. So she came from privileged beginnings. Hari and her three brothers were sent to private schools and received the best education available in the Netherlands. So we're going to skip this part right here because we don't got that much time. So he gets into the father's bad investments, and that led to them being destitute. She ended up moving in with her godfather, and then later her uncle. And then she was sent away to study teaching at a teacher's college. But the school didn't seem to interest her as much as her headmaster, with whom she began having an affair in 1892. The headmaster was a married man, so after the affair was found out, Hari was expelled. That's very much dealing with her Mercury conjunct Mars, squaring Pluto in Taurus. Bored, lonely, and craving excitement, Hari was intrigued by an advertisement she saw in the newspaper. In March of 1895, an army captain named Rudolph John McLeod had placed an ad looking for a girl of pleasant character whom he could make his wife, and Hari decided to write to him. So basically, she married this older man who was a soldier, and then he ended up being abusive, and one of her children ended up dying. He actually gave her syphilis. So basically, she had a hard way to go with her first marriage. And then she left her husband, and then she started to dance, basically become like an exotic dancer, belly dancer, and she started to get a lot of attention. And again, she was also prostituting, and she was very much dealing with the upper crust in terms of her whoredom, you can say. But at some point, a man came along. He was working for the German government, and he asked her to be a spy because this was the time of World War One. So she agreed to be a spy because she had easy access into the, exclusive circles. But then a French government official, he basically tried to make her a spy as well, and she agreed to become his spy as well for France. So she was dealing with this conflict of interest, which ultimately cost her her life. So let me skip some of this. Okay, so Hari, however, was still beautiful, meaning after she divorced. Still very well known and still had a knack for attracting male attention. Oh no, this is after her career kind of fizzled out. So Hari, however, was still beautiful, still very well known, and still had a knack for attracting male attention. She became a courtesan, taking on a series of rich and powerful lovers. Her sexual conquests included high ranking military officers, influential politicians, and even royalty. Let me back up again and just read about her career as a dancer. So Mata Hari's dancing skyrocketed her to stardom. Any so called respectable career, it seemed, did not pay enough for Hari to support herself financially. But while sitting as an artist model, she had made some useful connections in Paris, in the Paris art world. According to biography, she had an affair with a French diplomat who convinced her to take advantage of the theatrical Oriental craze that was skyrocketing in popularity across Europe. Putting both her sexual allure and background in Indonesian dance to use, Hari took to the stage. She began first as a circus horse rider, performing under the name Lady McLeod, to the great displeasure of her ex husband's family. In 1905, she began dancing under the stage name Mata Hari, which translates to Eye of the Day in Malay. She performed an enticing striptease, dancing nearly nude except for an elaborately decorated breastplate and jewelry. She spun an exotic backstory, billing herself as a Javanese princess. Mind you, she was born in the Netherlands. She claimed to be the daughter of a Javanese Buddhist priest, and a Dutch woman who was born in a Hindu temple. To make her story more believable, she often performed draped in gauzy shawls, with statues of Hindu gods serving as her props. Her olive complexion and dark coloring helped sell the fantasy. Her risque performances were an instant hit. For the next decade, Hari received invitations to perform to sold out audiences all over Europe. So, because of World War One, her ability to perform, was greatly decreased. So it says by the time World War One began in 1914, Hari's career was in decline. As the saying goes, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And by 1910, younger, more beautiful, more skilled imitators had all but run Hari off the stage. She performed her last show in 1915. So from that point on, she started to do the prostitution really heavy, especially in the upper crust of society. Now, at first, Hari was largely unaffected by the war, while others were suffering food and cold shortages. Hari's lifestyle hadn't changed much. She was accustomed to traveling and living lavishly, and she continued to do so. Her extravagant style raised some ire and even suspicion, which was exacerbated by her apparently lax loyalties. Harry seduced her lovers indiscriminately, sleeping with men from a variety of nationalities, including French, Russian, Dutch, Spanish, Swiss, and German. In a later interview, Hari would claim that her weakness was men in uniforms. According to an unsealed M15 file, when Hari was faced with her acquaintances with officers of all ranks and all nations, she replied that she loved all officers and would rather have as her lover a poor officer than a rich banker. Hari was living in Berlin at the start of the war. She was expelled by the Germans, but not before they seized her money and valuables. However, they later reconsidered. Thinking Mata Hari might be of some use to them, they offered her 20,000 francs to become a spy. She accepted the money, but there is little evidence that Hari actually passed them useful information. She viewed the money as repayment for the items the Germans had taken when she was forced from the country. With money now in her pocket, Matahari continued to travel. Hari met Maslow, where she visited Paris in 1916, and quickly became infatuated with the young captain. The couple made plans to marry. However, while flying a mission over Germany in the summer of 1916, Maslow's plane was shot down. He survived, but he was exposed to phosphine gas, which left him almost blind. Maslow was sent to a hospital near the front to recover. Hari was desperate to see him, but to be granted access to the front, she had to obtain permission from the Duxine Bureau. All right. Now you got enough. You got the gist of this story, right? So let's get into her chart. Matahari, Dangerous Liaisons. This video has been sponsored by Matt. Thank you, Matt, for sponsoring this video. And Matt said, I have a special request when you get a chance. Matahari was a Leo spy during World War One who got caught up in a lot of scandal because of what she did and being a courtesan and dancer. Her real name was Margarita Gertruda Zell, but she went by Matahari, which means eye of the day in Malay. She was Dutch, but people thought she was South Asian or Middle Eastern because she had olive skin and dark features. Her North Node was in Pisces too, the current transit we're in. And I believe this played in her attracting men who shower her in gifts, but also her downfall. You're right about that, because that Pisces energy can result in being spoiled. All right, so let's get into her numerology first. So her birth number is 7. 7 is very much like Neptune Pisces energy, and that fits her Pisces stellium. So she has Moon in Pisces, conjoined to Saturn, and also her North Node in Pisces in her fourth house. So that 7 corresponds to her Pisces energy. Artistic expression, namely dancing in her case. So 7 is very artistic. And 7, like Neptune and Pisces, is very much about glamour, which she very much was. She was glamorous, lived that glamorous life. And fantasy. So she fulfilled the fantasies of a lot of men, the sexual fantasies, that is, and that's very seven. You could say she was hypnotic, especially to the men that were giving her money. They were making it rain on her. Secrecy is very much dealing with seven. And being a spy, you have to be very much about secrecy, lies, and deception. You know, she was lying from the day she came out the womb, I believe. And she would lie about her origins, her background. And that was to make her appear to be even more exotic than what she really was. So she had an exotic look. But to complement that look, she lied and said that she was basically from Indonesia and she was like mixed race and all this. Scandalous. So, you know, people that were more of the Puritan side of values saw her as scandalous. Her numerous affairs, her numerous clients as a prostitute just made her scandalous alone, and also the nature of her dress and dancing. Yes, Kauai, the glamorous life she don't need. And magic, mysticism, all of that. I wouldn't be surprised if she was putting some things in some of her lovers' drinks to get them to be even more attracted to her, even more devoted to her. Life path number is 10, that breaks down to 1, and that complements or corresponds to her Leo energy. So she has a Leo stellium in her chart. Her sun is in Leo. And that very much corresponds to that 10 life path number. So tens and ones, they could very well be very much into entertainment or be an entertainer, be a performer, stardom, fame, and the men. And I like to call that 10 if we're talking about men. That's like you riding the cock carousel. That's like anybody can jump on and get it. Now, in her case, because of the Leo, you know, she wanted royalty. She wanted boss like men. She wanted leaders. So she wanted, you know, the upper crust. So that corresponds to that 10 Leo energy. But yeah, when you're a 10, hey, you might let dudes take a ride, especially if they're willing to pay your price, if you get what I mean. Now, with 10, it showed that her life ran in cycles of ups and downs, extreme ups and downs. And it started when she was a child. So she was born wealthy, but then her father made some bad investments and that left them destitute. So she started off with the up cycle and then experienced the down cycle through her father. And then her father later died, a early death. And then she gets married, so she's having this up cycle, but that quickly turned into a down cycle because he started to abuse her. And then when she got divorced, she's approaching her up cycle again as becoming Matahari, this exotic dancer. And then she goes back to the down cycle once she gets recruited as a spy. So with 10, you can very well benefit from your associations, which she very well did. But you got to be careful because your very associations can lead to your downfall with that 10 energy, which is exactly what happened with her. And then children. Leo rules children, and that 10-1 energy is dealing with children as well. She had two children. One died of an illness, and the other one was taken away from her by her ex husband. And riding coattails. So tens can ride other people's coattails. So she basically was riding the coattails of these Asian dancers, and like in terms of the look, in terms of the dancing style and all that. And she was riding the coattails of any rich man that, you know, was attracted to her. So here's her chart right here, August 7th, 1876. So we're going way back into history. And she was born at 1 p.m. That would make her a Scorpio rising at the 12th degree. That 12th degree, you know, I talk about that sacrifice, victimization. She got Jupiter in Scorpio in the first house at that 22nd degree. You know what I say about that 22nd degree? More about that in a minute. She has Black Moon Lilith in Capricorn in that second house. Saturn, Moon, and North Node in Pisces in the fourth. Neptune could join Chiron in Taurus in the sixth. Pluto in Taurus in the seventh. Venus in Cancer in the eighth. She has her Sun, Mars, Mercury, Uranus, and midheaven all up in Leo. And she has a Virgo South Node in that 10th house. Now you see how Libra is spanning the 11th like that? That very much can deal with relationships of convenience, which her first marriage was actually, it wasn't about love, it was a relationship of convenience. And then all the other relationships she's had with the men were very much relationships of convenience. So let's talk about her ascendant 12th degree of Scorpio. So again, that 12th degree deals with sacrifice and victimization. So she definitely experienced both in her lifetime. So sacrifice, especially in terms of having to sacrifice her father because he died a rather early death, and then also sacrificing her daughter because once she got divorced, her husband forced her hand in giving him custody because she couldn't provide for her daughter because she was destitute. And then you could say she was a victim of her own circumstance, but she was also a victim of, you could just say, the governments that were involved. But she was very much a willing participant. So, this 12th degree of Scorpio in particular can pertain to her being a multinational spy. That 12 is very much dealing with multinational. 12 is breaking down to three, and that's Jupiter energy. So, we're talking about international affairs, foreign affairs. And she was regarded as a sex symbol. And that Scorpio rising can make one a seductress, in some cases, a whore. Not everybody that's a Scorpio rising is a whore, but that's one of the possible manifestations. Basically, it shows that she used what she got to get what she wanted. Mysterious, going undercover. So, again, as a spy, and the abuse that she endured at the hands of her ex husband, betrayal. So she was basically seen to be betraying others. She betrayed one country for the other. And her execution. She was sentenced to death by firing squad. Now her ascendant was conjoined to Zubin el Janubi, and that's a fixed star that can manifest as loss, theft, betrayal, abuse, venereal disease, which is a fancy term for STDs, and her husband did give her syphilis because he was just slinging that thing all around town. Poisoning, drowning, anguish, revenge, criminality. So the only thing that doesn't apply to her would be the drowning. I wouldn't be surprised if she was involved in some poisoning of some of the or maybe not poisoning, but again, like I said, putting something in a man's drink to kind of get him more in an amorous mood or make him more attracted or devoted to her or whatever. I don't think she was above that. And her ascendant running parallel to the fixed star Sabik, and Sabik can represent wastefulness and lost energy, perverted morals, and some people, especially back then, would consider her to have perverted morals and success in evil deeds. So her Venus in Cancer formed a nice trine with her Scorpio ascendant. That's a very positive aspect. Trines can make things very easy for the person. So this represents her being the belly dancer, or you could say exotic dancer, being seductive, sexually suggestive dancing, being a lady of the evening. So this trine made it easy for her to be a prostitute, or you could say courtesan if you want to keep it fancy, but also being a lady of the evening. I got a story about this term, and it's dealing with Halloween. And we just had Halloween. So I think I was like maybe 10 at the time, and it was Halloween, and me and my friends, we decided to get dressed up to look like rocker girls or punk rockers or whatever. So we put on like heavy makeup and our hair was all wild and stuff. And I remember we were walking past this lady, and she was like, "Oh, ladies of the evening." And she started laughing. And I thought it was a compliment. I thought ladies of the evening was like some like classy lady that was like metropolitan, sophisticated, and all that. Until somebody told me, no, ladies of the evening mean prostitute. I was like, what? Yeah. So that term makes me think of that situation. But ease in attracting clients, ease in attracting benefactors. Yes, harlot, Alex, that's a great word. I would say, Alex, she probably was dabbling in witchcraft. And she does have a star connected to a planet in her chart that does deal with witch hunts. Ease in being a spy with Venus and Cancer representing her ties to other nations. Now, Venus is conjoined to the asteroid Eurydice, and Eurydice often pertains to dancers. So here it is right here. So it reinforces the dancing theme, but Eurydice also has a theme that deals with stalking. So she was being stalked. She was being followed. She was being surveilled once they started to become suspicious of her dealings in Germany, and also I think it was Great Britain, Germany, Spain. Like they were talking about she was dealing with men from all over. She was an international lover basically, and that speaks to that Leo stellium in her ninth house. Here she don't even got no drawers on. She was wild as hell because again, we talk about the early 1900s. She was dropping it like it's hot. She was busting it wide open, y'all. So again, yeah, scandalous for real. Now, as Mata Hari, she captivates society audiences with her exotic dance, slowly bearing her body. For 10 successful years, her name has been synonymous with sensuality and glamour. I took this from a website talking about her. So her success as a dancer, you can also add in her success as a courtesan or a harlot or a prostitute, whatever you want to call it. That's due to the grand trine in her chart involving her Venus in Cancer, Moon in Pisces, and her Scorpio ascendant. So, we all been born with gifts, right? We all have some talents and skills, and sometimes the talents and skills that someone has been given is their very own body. So I'm not going to hate on her for that. I'm like, make the money, girl. Just don't make it make you. Here, this is her when she's a little older. But she looked like she was in her 50s right here. But she was killed at 41. So she might have been like 39, 40 here. That's a hard 39, 40. Now, Jupiter at 22nd degree Scorpio in first house. Now, that 22nd degree, it deals with submission and caution. It's about either you're going to be controlled or you're going to be in control. With that 22nd degree, you don't have much choice. You're either going to be willed and control, which she really tried to do, or you're going to end up being under someone's control. So she was good as long as she didn't become a spy. Once she agreed to become a spy, she was under someone else's control. When she was dancing and tricking, she was in control. of her destiny. But the minute she agreed to be a spy and she did it supposedly out of financial need, that's when the tables turned and now she's under someone else's control. When you are dealing with that 22nd degree, you always want to try to be the one in control. And kill or be killed is another possible manifestation of this 22nd degree. It can also play out as sudden death. Hypersexuality, because we're talking about Jupiter in Scorpio. So Jupiter in Scorpio alone could be hypersexuality. With the 22nd degree, that's like you down for whatever, you a freak. You also might like to strut around butt ass naked. And being an international spy, that's basically just Jupiter in Scorpio, period. Her exotic look with Jupiter being in the first house. Ellie says she actually looks so. Leave it to Ellie to be give you the real. So Ellie says she actually looks okay. People back then aged like raisins. They did, but you know life was harder, so it makes sense. So also this Jupiter in Scorpio in the first house is dealing with her fraudulent persona, especially regarding her origins and beginnings, with Jupiter ruling the fourth house via intercepted Pisces. Because she says she was part Javanese and she was born in the Netherlands. She was Dutch. Now, probably in her family tree, there was some strong, I'm thinking probably like Sephardic Jewish, so that Eastern European type of energy lineage she probably had. But yeah, she was not part Javanese. So she was a fraud to a certain extent. Jupiter in Scorpio trine North Node in Pisces. So this is another aspect that's perfect for being a prostitute, but also a spy. And this is one of the aspects that represents her being spoiled and doted on by her father with the North Node in Pisces in the fourth house. And again, it's that Pisces energy that results in being spoiled. Attracting benefactors who would pay for her room and board. She even got a house out the deal. Now, I like this picture right here. She's styling and profiling right here. I'm like, okay, get it, girl. And like back then, that would be like the epitome of glamour. Now she got a 5 point Leo stellium. Sun, Mars, Mercury, Uranus, and midheaven. That's some strong Leo energy, which largely explains why she lived the life that she lived. When you combine that Scorpio rising, that Jupiter and Scorpio in the first house, and then combine that Leo energy, especially the Leo energy in the ninth house, yeah, it basically tells the story. But also her Pisces energy as well. So Leo is the performer and the entertainer, which she basically was. Fame, popularity, attention. When you got a Leo stellium in the ninth house, that's the epitome of being an attention whore. Like you can't get enough attention. You want to be on center stage all the time. So yes, fame, popularity, attention, she definitely had that. I feel you on the androgyny because she did kind of look a little rough around the edges. All the men, father. So her father is very much tied into that Leo because Leo rules fathers. And again, she was very close to her father. But all going back to all the men again, with that ninth house, that can deal with a lot of men, but it can also deal with men from different countries, foreign men. So again, when I say she was an international lover, that ninth house stellium and Leo is pointing to that. Also, the theme dealing with her children. She was very much attracted to leaders, men of power, authorities, bosses. She probably would have got with a king or a prince if she had the chance. So that's very much Leo as well. Marketing. Leo rules marketing. And she was very much about marketing herself. It was said that she would always like place ads in magazines, for her performances and stuff. And I think even her services with, the magazines that would allow it. But yeah, she was heavy on the marketing. Hold on, let me see what you're saying. I gotta get my reading glasses. Oh no, where are my reading glasses? Oh, here they are. All right, you said another Leo woman in this day and age who is a Leo is Lily Phillips, who slept with 100 men in one day. Is that the OnlyFans chick? And Madonna is a Leo, and she slept with a lot of men, and she has no shame about it either. Bold, courageous, that comes with Leo. But I would also venture to say that she was a narcissist. Now, why, Alex, YouTube basically was trying to hide your comment. What is there to hide about that? That's ridiculous. Anyway, narcissistic and being very vain. I don't think you cannot be narcissistic with having that heavy Leo energy in the ninth house. It's just coming with the territory. Now, she could have projected that onto some of the men she was dealing with too, but I would say that, yeah, she was a big time narcissist to basically do what she did. And even the way she went out was rather narcissistic because again, she was sentenced to death via firing squad. And back then, they didn't play around with that, oh, you're going to spend 20 years on death row. She was killed months after her sentencing. I think it was only like 4 months after she was sentenced to death. They have her in front of a firing squad. And with the traditional way of the firing squad execution is they will blindfold you. They'll tie your hands behind your back and they'll blindfold you, or they might tie your hands in your front. But she said that she didn't want to be blindfolded. She wanted to face her killer's head on. That's a badass bitch right there. That's that Leo energy in the ninth house all day. I'm like, talk about courage. I don't know that many people that could do that. Now, her son was running parallel to the fixed star Aldebaran. And Aldebaran promotes eloquence, high honors, integrity. Now, that integrity was questionable. I would say that integrity went out the window after a while. Popularity, courage, warmongering, and again, this all took place during World War One. Agitation, danger, loss, violent death. She was very much agitating both sides of the fence, Germans and the French. Violent death. She definitely suffered a violent death through firing squad. Here she is right here. I really like this picture right here. This is where she's looking more feminine than some of the other pictures. Now it says by the time World War One began in 1914, Hari's career was in decline. As the saying goes, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And by 1910, younger, more beautiful, more skilled imitators had all but run Hari off the stage. She performed her last show in 1915. So her having these imitators, that's her sun in Leo running parallel to the asteroid Echo. Because Echo can deal with where somebody is trying to copy your style. Someone is echoing you. But it also deals with her having Venus in Cancer. Because Venus in Cancer could deal with where there's women that are mirroring her, that are copying her style. So both Sun, parallel, Echo, and Venus in Cancer is pointing to other women copying her style and imitating her. Hari, however, was still beautiful, still very well known, and still had a knack for attracting male attention. She became a courtesan, aka prostitute, taking on a series of rich and powerful lovers. Now, nowadays, they would never call a prostitute a courtesan. Like, why are y'all trying to be cute? Like, come on now. Anyway, taking on a series of rich and powerful lovers. Her sexual conquests included high-ranking military officers, influential politicians, and even royalty, per the New York Times. And I was under the understanding that courtesan basically just meant that you were a prostitute to a king, not just any old man that has a high position. So again, her attracting these high ranking military officials, influential politicians, and even royalty is dealing with that Leo stellium in her ninth house, as you see right here. And that Sun conjunct Mars made her very bold. And somebody asked about androgyny. Sun conjunct Mars can make some women, especially if it's in a masculine sign like Leo, kind of either come across as kind of manly or they could even look a little mannish as well. And maybe some even question if she was truly a biological woman because of these squares involving her Scorpio ascendant and this Leo energy, because that could produce a lot of like masculine energy that's hitting up her appearance. And some of them might have wondered what was under that hood. That might have also resulted in her being very popular as well. Because you know, a lot of men, they like women that come with a little something extra, if you know what I mean. And if that was the case, I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just saying if that was the case, that Jupiter and Scorpio in the first house could deal with where she had a big old thing. But it could even deal with, you ever hear about the saying throw a hot dog down a hallway? That Jupiter in the first house. Again, that's a busting it wide open Jupiter. And that could deal with where her hoo-ha was huge. And it could deal with being stretched out, being ran through by all those men. But we can also say that could also be a woman that does come with something extra. And Scorpio is the sign of transgenderism. But I think she was a woman at the end of the day because she had children and stuff. But I'm just saying, this is just to show you how the chart can play out in different ways. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if some men were curious. And that's why they got with her because they just wanted to know. But yeah, that's to answer your question with the androgyny question. All right, where was I? All right, let's move on. So let's just break down this Mercury conjunct Mars and Leo. Very cavalier about sex. That's what can produce that Mercury conjunct Mars and Leo. And it can also manifest as casual sex or even random sexual encounters. And it can point to a steady stream of lovers. And that she wasn't above advertising her services. This is also representing her ability to get information and intelligence out of men as a spy. So, out of men who are in positions of power. Mercury conjunct Uranus in Leo. This gave off a magnetism. So, she would just draw people in, namely the men. Unconventional ideas. Thinks in absolute terms. Being very resolute, such as when she was like, no, I want to see my killers shooting me. I don't need a blindfold. And they were like, are you sure? And she was like, bring it on. A liberated mindset, a rebellious mindset, but you can also say a perverse mindset. Because again, especially we're talking about back in the day, early 1900s, people were more conservative. So your average person probably looked at her as being perverted and having allies or the alliances she created. Also, this Mercury conjunct Uranus represents her ability to switch up her manner of speaking and her communication style to suit different types of men. And this can also cause her to be phony. And also where she was performing partially nude. It's the Mercury that produces the partially. Nude is Uranus. And she has Uranus conjoined to the fixed star Prima Hyatum. And this star can manifest as scandal, violence, disgrace, and imprisonment. And all of this applies to her life. Real, real says she sounds crazy. Let me see what y'all are saying before I move on. Josie said that thing was thangin'. Palace said, I'm curious too now. Palace said, as long as I'll be getting paid, I'm down with that. LOL, pay me. Real said, who's this person? Harpo, who this woman? What's the curiosity about her? Just asking, coming in late. So Matahari, she was this exotic dancer who ended up, she was an exotic dancer slash prostitute who ended up becoming a spy for both Germany and France during World War One. That's the gist of it. And she got caught up. She could have been intersex, but can intersex people have babies? But I mean, did we ever see her pregnant? Maybe those kids were adopted. Who knows? But I would say I wouldn't totally rule it out. Ellie said maybe she had one of those big dick. I was thinking about that. Yes, Ellie. That could very well be the case with that Jupiter at the 22nd degree of Scorpio in the first house, which could kind of protect, could kind of lean towards intersex, where her clitoris is like huge, it's large, it's like a miniature penis, basically. And that 22nd degree can produce like a freak of nature type of thing going on. So I wouldn't rule it out. And like I said, that can also deal with where she has an abnormally large hoo ha. If she was a biological woman, that coochie is huge. At least men were sucking on it like a Capri Sun, right? All right, here she is performing some dance where she's surrounded by her lesbian lovers. I wouldn't be surprised if she was also carpet munching too, especially with that Venus in Cancer, and that Venus is ruling her 11th house. That Libra spanning that 11th house can deal with homosexual relationships, lesbian relationships, since she's a woman. And with Venus in Cancer trying in that moon in Pisces, that could be a secret sexual relationship with women. Now, life as a seductive dancer affords her a glamorous life and charmed existence. That's what this trine is basically blessing her with. But also, this is representing fulfilling sexual fantasies. Ease in masquerading as another race, culture, nationality. Also, this can play out as racial ambiguity. Being a cultural icon, having people spellbound, hypnotic energy. And yes, I'm looking at this as she was probably having secret sexual trysts with women. She probably went both ways. And again, with that Leo stellium in the ninth house, that is very much about free love. And like, love who you want to love. You're free to love who you want to love. And then the Libra on her 11th house, that's very much with Venus and Cancer in the eighth. Mm-hmm. Venus conjunct Canopus. Now, Canopus is a fixed star that pertains to voyages, journeys, creativity, but also scandal, violence, great glory, fame, and wealth. All of this applies to her life. Hey, Tara, how you doing? All right, she had Moon conjunct Saturn in Pisces in the fourth house. So this can represent a close, cherished relationship with her father, and also a sheltered and charmed upbringing, at least in the very beginning until her father lost his money. And artistry as a profession, in her case, dancer, costumes, makeup, jewelry, that's very Pisces, and her basically being in a glamorous profession, and also a profession where she's on her back most of the time. Imprisonment, overstepping boundaries with government officials in different countries, with the moon representing the countries and Saturn representing the government officials. Pisces is overstepping boundaries. That moon in Pisces also, it enabled her to blend in and also masquerade as somebody that she wasn't. And I've just known men to typically go crazy over women that have strong Pisces energy in their charts, whether they're a Pisces sun or a Pisces moon, Pisces rising, Venus in Pisces. Neptune could join the Chiron in Taurus. Her unconventional and eclectic fashions, such as this costume right here, the elaborate headpieces and costumes that were made for her. And that sixth house that can deal with where she had a seamstress on hire that would sew up these costumes for her and, put on the embellishments and all that. Blinged out, that's very much this Neptune could join the Chiron and Taurus, blinged out costumes. Neptune and Chiron sesqui square South Node in Virgo. So I'm looking at this as, with that, uh, what do I'm losing my train of thought. With the Virgo South Node in the 10th house, that can show that she did have some strictures or some guidelines or some, you know, policies that she was just like, I'm not going to, do certain things. So she may have had a no kissing policy for her clientele. And perhaps due to health reasons, just to try to protect herself. That 10th house can deal with restrictions, limitations, and it's business at the end of the day. So she could have been very much about, hey, it's a business. I'm not kissing you. You're not my man. But this is also representing the trap that the French government official laid for her, which I'll get into in a minute. Neptune is conjoined to Hamal, and Hamal is a fixed star that pertains to violence, cruelty, and brutality. And this could represent how she was treated while in prison, because Neptune rules prisons. Neptune parallel, but maybe also by some of the Johns that she was servicing as well. They might have been, beating her up and stuff. That comes with the territory when you're a prostitute. Neptune parallel Vendemiatrix. That's a star that pertains to falsity, and she definitely was falsifying her background. Folly, she definitely was a victim of her own folly. Disgrace, stealing, widowhood, depression, witch hunts, and that's the witch hunts I'm talking about. So, who was I think Alex, you had asked, was she a witch? And I was like, she has a star connected to a planet that deals with witch hunts. And some people look at her conviction and execution as a witch hunt. Some people claim that, oh, they were just targeting her because she was a free spirited woman. She was like a personification of Lilith, sexually liberated, loved who she wanted to love. Mysticism and the occult. And then somebody asked, was she a witch? And again, I said that I think she did dabble in witchcraft. And this whole star can pertain to her interest in mysticism and the occult. So here's her first husband. Well, she only was married once, but this was her husband. And there was a significant age difference between the two of them. But unfortunately, the marriage Far from a fairy tale. John, that was her husband, is a hot-tempered man. That's very Sun conjunct Mars. Is a very hot-tempered man and Mercury conjunct Mars who is used to giving orders. He is an alcoholic, unfaithful, and constantly in debt. Margaret, on the other hand, has a fiery temper, and that's Sun conjunct Mars on her part. As an elegant young woman, she does not leave the men unmoved, and she knows it. She likes to flirt, much to her husband's fury. So keep in mind that when you get married, you're sharing your sun with your husband, the sun in your chart. You're also sharing your Mars. So the whole he had a fiery temper or he was hot tempered, that's dealing with her sun conjoined to Mercury and Mars. But then that also deals with her being hot tempered as well and her being a flirt. So she was doing things to piss him off. Now, I'm not saying that justifies him being abusive towards her. Now, as an elegant young woman, she does not leave the men unmoved, and she knows it. She likes to flirt, much to her husband's fury. So this is dealing with Mercury, Mars, and Uranus in Leo squaring Pluto in Taurus. You could include the sun, but the sun is a bit too far away to be included in this square. But so it's basically Mercury, Mars, and Uranus in Leo squaring Pluto in Taurus. And then Pluto was conjoined to Algol. And Algol is considered to be a evil fixed star. It's considered to be one of the most deleterious fixed stars in the heavens. And it pertains to primitive female sexuality, which she definitely was exuding, but also strangulation. Now that could occur during one of her, one of her many sexual servicing, or, again, as a prostitute, I'm pretty sure she got with some men that wanted to choke her out. And maybe her husband choked her out on a couple of occasions. Now we know she wasn't beheaded, so that's not applying to her. But danger to the throat and neck. Now with Mercury, Mars, and Uranus squaring Pluto, this is also dealing with her being shot to death. And with Pluto being in Taurus, I would think that the bullet wound to the neck is the one that took her out, like that really ended her. So this applies danger to the throat and neck, murder, violence, mass catastrophe, the evil one, the demon star. But this star can also make one passionate, intense, extremely creative, but also hysterical. And this star basically is pertaining to an expression of the dark side, which she encountered through the men she was dealing with, especially starting with her husband. Ellie said her husband looks like he'll slap the shit out of her, don't he? He looked like a mean old bastard. Now, these were her two kids. That little boy, it looked like, he had some difficulty from birth. It looked like, he looked a little delayed. Now, it says in the early summer of 1899, the children suddenly became seriously ill. The army doctor comes to help. Oh, please hit that like button as you get in so YouTube will maybe suggest this to a chosen few. Now the army doctor comes to help, but he's too late. Little Norman, 2.5 years old, dies under suspicious circumstances. Nani, just a year old, barely survives. John and Margarita are inconsolable. Remember, Margarita is her birth name. Matahari is her stage name. Now, the story goes that the children were poisoned by the nanny. Now, that is dealing with midheaven at the 29th degree of Leo conjoined to Dejanira, because Dejanira is an asteroid that can deal with poisoning. But they're saying that really wasn't the case. That was just hearsay. But even hearsay will show up in the chart. But also, her South Node is conjoined to Hebe in Virgo, and Virgo is the nanny. So again, the rumor about the nanny poisoning the boy is showing up here. Now it says it is more likely that Norman died of treatment for syphilis. John passed on this venereal disease to Margarita. She infected her children with it through birth. The family is treated with toxic mercury as is customary at the time. That probably killed her son. So, that T square is representing her husband's philandering that resulted in her getting syphilis and then her passing it on to her children. And then especially Jupiter contraparallel Panacea. Panacea is dealing with a cure. It's at the 13th degree of Leo. So this basically is showing, yes, the little baby died, her son died as a result of being treated for the syphilis. South Node conjoining Hebe and Virgo is also dealing with the health of a child being very vulnerable. And then Saturn contraparallel Hebe is representing the father's influence. Hebe is an asteroid that deals with children. Thank you, Real Real. Yes, we got a small group this afternoon, but hopefully the replay gang will be on point. Sometimes I like a small, intimate group. Now, 1.5 years after the move, they had enough. On March 19th, 1902, the McLeods board the boat back to the Netherlands. Now, she has her North Node in Pisces conjoined to the Arabic part of water journeys. So she took a lot of boat trips, a lot of journeys via water, and it shows up through that Arabic part. Just wanted to put that out there. On August 30th, 1902, shortly after returning to the Netherlands, John and Margaretha got divorced. Margaretha is given custody of Nani, but John refuses to pay alimony. It is practically impossible for Margaretha to provide for herself as a divorced woman, but she cannot go back to John because he is crazy and abuses her, she says. She is forced to give up her 4-year old daughter to John and ends up on the street without money at the age of 26. Margarita's lawyer and the judge cannot help her. It is impossible to seize the pension of someone who has served in the Dutch East Indies. So she couldn't even get child support. So him basically taking custody of her daughter is represented by Mercury, Mars, and Uranus in Leo squaring Pluto in Taurus. And him refusing to pay her alimony as well. And then she had Moon in Pisces opposing Arabic part of marriage. So this is basically representing her being abandoned and being left homeless because Moon in Pisces, that is a moon that can result in potentially being homeless. So Moon in Pisces opposing that Arabic part of marriage. And then Saturn contra parallel Hebe, again, this is representing the issue with her not being able to care for her daughter because she's poor and how the father ends up getting custody. And here she is again with her mean old husband. Look, you could see the Leo in her right here. She just sitting back like a boss. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna be here long. Now, I can only tell you that out of passion and madness, he almost killed me with the bread knife on a Sunday afternoon, and that I owe my life to a chair that fell over and gave me time to find the door and get help. Now, it's chiefly that Mars square Pluto in particular in her chart, but I'm including this whole Leo stellium squaring Pluto. But Mars square Pluto can, if it's in a woman's chart, it can result in her attracting the worst kinds of men. Men that are abusive, men that are serial cheaters, men that will even try to kill you. It is a poor life, and Margaretha returns to the Netherlands defeated. She is now desperate and penniless. She is forced to reduce herself to prostitution. The family pulls their hands off her, and in June 1904, she leaves for Paris for good. And this is also dealing with that moon in Pisces opposing the Arabic part of marriage. Her escaping to another country as a result of that marriage. So, Matt wants to know what in her chart led to these experiences. So, some of what he points out then, as a courtesan and dancer, men were said to have been enraptured by her, especially the soldiers. So, she had Jupiter and Scorpio opposing Pluto and Taurus. This represents the Johns or the tricks that gave her money in exchange for sex. And also, South Node in Virgo, trine Pluto and Taurus. This made it easy to attract soldiers for sexual relations. With, oops, I put 11. Let me correct that. That's supposed to be the 10th house. Hold on. It's always a mistake here or there. So that Virgo South Node in the 10th is representing the soldiers, trine Pluto and Taurus, giving her money, her having it really easy with them. All right, let me go back. Okay. North Node parallel Amor. And Amor is at the 25th degree of Capricorn. Amor is an asteroid that means exactly how it sounds. Amor is the Spanish word for love. So Amor deals with love, but also attraction, being enamored by someone, um, romance. So with that North Node running parallel to Amor being at the 25th degree of Capricorn, that's representing the military men, the high-ranking military men, and also the government officials. Also, this represents her marrying a man who was much older than her. And with the North Node, it's all about more so about wanting to live a charmed existence because that North Node's in Pisces, but also with the husband, she used him as a means of escape to escape her situation, being, poor. And, you could say to be rescued as well, which is very Pisces. Whenever Margaret is No, I'm sorry. Wherever Margaret is, she always has lovers. She likes to flirt and suitors line up for her. She prefers high-ranking officers and noble types. So again, that's representing her Sun conjunct Mars in Leo in the ninth house, her preference for high-ranking officers and noble types. And again, North Node parallel Amor. Despite her lucrative dancing career, they financed her extravagant lifestyle from 1908 to 1912. So did the French banker Roussel. He rents a castle for Margarita, and later a villa with carriage, riding horses, and staff. Another lover gave her 300,000 Reichsmarks, just under 900,000 euros, as a parting gift. Damn. Again, like I said, they were making it rain on her. They were caking her up. So her being able to get this money from these men, including them, paying for her to live in a castle and this villa and all this, that's Venus. Ruler of her seventh house. She got Taurus on the seventh. That's her getting money out of men. In Cancer, in the eighth, trine Scorpio ascendant. And that Cancer in particular, that's representing the castle and the villa. And then Venus in Cancer, trine Moon in Pisces. That whole grand trine she has is representing her basically having it easy, getting money out of men, having them pay her rent, all of that. So here's that grand trine that I speak of. Here's Venus right here, trining that Moon in Pisces. And then also that Moon trining that Scorpio ascendant trining Venus. This was her money maker right here. If you have a grand trine in your chart, you need to maximize its potential and really get the most out of it that you can, especially in this day and age. And then you can say that she had a quasi kite in her chart when you add Black Moon Lilith into the mix. But you really gotta, take that with a grain of salt because Black Moon Lilith is not a solid body in the sky. I mean, it's not even real. It's not. It's just more theoretical as a point. Now, she wants to go back to Paris to get her dancing career off the ground again, but in vain. So she decides to go to The Hague again. What she doesn't know, however, is that wherever she goes, she's being shadowed by intelligence agencies. The British, the French, the Germans, they're all watching her. I always feel like somebody's watching me. All right, let's see where we're at. Okay, so her being followed by intelligence agencies. So she has Capricorn on the third house cups. So Saturn's ruling her third house is conjoined to the moon in Pisces in the fourth. That's her being shadowed by intelligence agencies. And then that Jupiter and Scorpio opposing Pluto and Taurus, that's her being under surveillance. And that's her being stalked. Venus conjunct Uranus. I already mentioned this asteroid, but I'm bringing it up again because of the stalking theme. Being stalked, being followed. And again, Matt wants to know what's the main aspect that led to her downfall and execution. Well, it was this T square. So I already mentioned the T square. And keep in mind that your chart is basically a collection of stories. And these aspects and aspect patterns, they're like the gifts or the curses that keep on giving. So they will manifest in a number of ways throughout our lives. So this T square is basically ultimately led to her downfall. It led to her execution. So again, Mercury, Mars, and Uranus, and the midheaven. Now we're including the midheaven in Leo, squaring Jupiter in Scorpio and Pluto in Taurus, with Jupiter opposing Pluto. And that would be considered a fixed T square. And fixed T squares, that's like your fate is sealed. There's nothing you can do at this point. It's done. It's curtains. So basically, what led to her execution was the fact that she was not loyal. These squares, or the squares between that Leo stellium and that Pluto and Taurus in particular, is showing a lack of loyalty because she was all about going with the highest bidder. So if another side offered her more money, she was going to go with them. And you know, you eventually you're going to get yourself in a heap of trouble. You're going to get caught up eventually if you're playing both sides like that. And that's exactly what she was doing. She was trying to play both sides. And again, it was all about getting money. So her need for money, and not just about, it wasn't about survival because she had become accustomed to living that glamorous life. She had become accustomed to living a life of luxury, a life of great wealth. So, you know, when you become accustomed to that, you want to keep it up. So she was the cause of her own downfall ultimately because she got greedy. She wanted more and more money. So she ended up being sentenced to death, which is represented by this T square as well. And then she had Mercury and Mars in Leo opposing the Arabic part of discord. And this is representing Matahari sowing seeds of discord amongst world leaders and powerful men. And you know, you can't have that, especially with this being a man's world. It's still an old boys club, and women aren't in it. So anytime it seems like a woman got the drop on a man or that she's getting over, oh, they gonna handle her. They gonna make an example out of her. Especially back then. She got too bold. She got overly confident. That's that ninth house stellium in Leo. Now, one evening in May 1916, Margarita receives a visit from the German consul Kremer in The Hague. He knows she is going to Paris and wants to recruit her as a spy. As a traveling artist, she is extremely suitable for this. So, again, her being chosen to be this spy and her being paid pretty well for it is that grand trine in particular. But this grand trine, and this just showed you that even positive aspects can lead to your ruin. You gotta be careful. You gotta tread carefully, even when it comes to the positive aspects. That South Node in Virgo trying that Pluto in Taurus, that helped her too. So basically she has a mystic rectangle involving her nodes, Pluto, and Jupiter. And that also facilitated her becoming a spy as well. Now, Creamer asks if she wants to collect intelligence of all kinds as Agent H21. So he was like, do you want to be my secret agent? Do you want to be a spy for me? I'm going to pay you handsomely. And he decided to name her Agent H21, and that corresponds to her nodes, chiefly that north node at the 21st degree of Pisces. So the degrees can pertain to numbers that you come across in your life that are significant. Also, degrees can deal with ages and also the number of times you've done something. Now, he already offers her 20,000 francs. Although Margarita thinks that's not enough, she still takes it, in her own words, with the plan never to do anything for the money. But she could use the money, and after all, she sees it as payment for the fur coats the Germans stole from her in 1914. So you see, she was more about labels and, the riches and all that, the spoils, which is very Leo. And again, that ninth house, that could make her greedy. She was all trying to replace those fur coats. So it wasn't about her, oh, I gotta eat. I'm, suffering. I don't have a place to stay. No, she was thinking about those fur coats. So Jupiter in Scorpio trying Pisces North Node, again, that helped, that basically made her to be a perfect spy, and where, she's able to replenish what was taken from her. When Margarita is back from Vitel, Ledoux, this is the French government official, sets his trap. He makes her believe that he wants to recruit her as a French spy for the Belgium area. Margarita also senses an opportunity and asks for the main prize, 1 million francs, which is 2.5 million euros in today's money. She is in serious need of money and wants to marry the Russian captain. So again, the French guy, the French government official that lays the trap for her is represented by Neptune, Sesqui Square, South Node, and Virgo. And she took the bait. Let me see what y'all are saying. Alex said, those poor kids. Ellie said, I mean, her children did get syphilis in vitro, so they may have been slow. Yeah. Palace said they looked like they were hot in those clothes. Good Lord. Ellie said, I too also want to escape to another country. Pisces Moon said, which planets can you count for a kite pattern? So it could be any of the planets. But when it comes to like the Black Moon Lilith or other points, like I wouldn't include the vertex in a kite. You could in under certain circumstances, but I would say, you know, be conservative with that. But a kite is basically it consists of a grand trine, two sextiles, and an opposition. And that's your kite. And kites, they can produce wonderful things. Like if you got a kite in your chart, man, you got it made. But with that being said, I've seen people still mess themselves up even though they have a kite in their chart. Still see themselves shoot themselves in the foot. And it's due to some of the challenging aspects they have. So Matt also wants to know which aspects gave her an exotic look despite being Dutch. And he said they're typically blonde, blue eyed. So, yes, she does not have a characteristic Dutch look. And then Matt goes on to say she was tall, though, like 5'10". People thought she was South Asian, Middle Eastern, but genealogy research doesn't show any other admixture in her tree. Some have speculated Romany roots. I would definitely say that. Like she looked like one of those Romany gypsies. So the fact that she's a Scorpio rising very much deals with her dark countenance, her swarthy appearance, and especially with that Jupiter in Scorpio in the first house. Like I said before, that Jupiter in the first house can produce an exotic look, regardless of the sign that it's in. But then her having more of that dark look, that's coming from Scorpio. So having a dark, swarthy appearance can very much be likened to Scorpio rising. But keep in mind that not every Scorpio rising will have this dark appearance, but it can come with the Scorpio territory. I'm sure you've guys seen plenty of Scorpio dominant people, whether they're a Scorpio sun, moon, rising, Mars in Scorpio, where they have either dark features or very prominent features or bold features. Or you can even, what do I like to say? What's the word? Like robust. I like to use the word robust, and she definitely had that robust appearance. And then what's another word I like to use for Scorpio rising and Mars and Scorpio in particular? Full bodied is another characteristic that comes with Scorpio, but it's another one that I wanted to use. If I remember, I'll say it. I feel you, Earl, but we're talking back in the day when a lot of women weren't showing much skin. So if you got somebody like her who's willing to, bear most of it, drop it like it's hot, bust it wide open, then of course, she gonna be popular and she could dance. So again, we're dealing with men from back in the day that didn't have many options. Men had it kind of rough back then. They didn't have the makeup like they have now. They didn't have the stylists like they have now. Like stylists nowadays, they could take a ugly duckling and turn her into a beauty queen. So swarthy, I use the word swarthy to describe that Scorpio rising in her case in particular. So swarthy meaning used to describe a dark skinned person, sometimes olive skin, and they did say that she was olive skinned. Jupiter produces exotic appearance. Also, her Venus in Cancer is conjoined to her ninth house cuts, and her Venus is in trine to her Scorpio ascendant. And then she has Jupiter in Scorpio in the first house, trine Pisces North Node. So this is contributing to that exotic look and where she could easily masquerade as a different race or ethnicity. And again, this is where that racial ambiguity comes in. Ellie said, "Do y'all think she was a good lay? Because back then you didn't even have to be good, just a lay." I think I would say she was. Cause I would say she was the one. She was down to do anything to get that dollar. So I would say she would even let guys like so good lay. That's left up to people's own interpretation. But I would say she probably gave it her all. Scorpios, they give 110%. They go all in. So I would think with her having Jupiter and Scorpio in that first house, yeah, she went all in. I said the same thing, Earl, some Jewish genealogy. Okay, so Matt also wants to know what in her chart led to these experiences with men. So her experiences with men were complex. He said her father spoiled her, but died when she was a teenager. Then she got married to an abusive older man who allegedly gave her syphilis. So I'm kind of reiterating what I already said. So Venus in Cancer, trine Moon in Pisces, intercepted in that fourth house. Just having Pisces intercepted in the fourth house, that could deal with where your father spoiled you. But especially when you add in this trine with Venus in Cancer and the Moon in Pisces. So being spoiled by her father. And then we got Jupiter and Scorpio, co-ruler the fourth, opposing Pluto, squaring Mercury, Mars, and Uranus in Leo. And then Mercury, Mars, Uranus, and Leo is squaring Pluto and Taurus. So that T square basically is representing the death of her father. But before he died, it's also representing his bankruptcy, his financial woes. And then that T square, like I said, that also resulted in her getting syphilis from her husband, who was a big time philanderer. And then remember, Jupiter is running contra parallel to the asteroid Panacea, and that's her contracting syphilis from her abusive husband, who was a big time player. But yeah, so that concludes my reading on Mata Hari. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope this, was a little history lesson for you. It was for me, doing it, completing it, preparing for it, I guess you would say. But yeah, very interesting woman. She was definitely, before her time or ahead of her time or whatever you would say. Nowadays, people wouldn't even bat an eye at her, but back then, yeah, she was something extraordinary. And that's very Jupiter in the first house, being extraordinary. Yeah, she was 5'10", and that Jupiter in the first house can produce height too. So she was a big woman. Jupiter in that first house. But yeah, y'all have a wonderful afternoon. If anybody would like a reading, you could go to my website. The link is in the description section. And stay tuned for some more videos. I'll be back sooner than later. Um, I should be putting one out this week, another sponsored video, so stay tuned for that. And you can follow me on TikTok. Just look up The Realist Astrologer. I'm getting some traction on TikTok. I've been having a good time on it. And one of my TikTok videos got a lot of views, and I'm just like, wow, what a difference. I could never get that type of activity on YouTube. So even though I was dragging my feet about starting TikTok, so far, so good. I'm very grateful for the attention I've been getting. So if you haven't followed me on TikTok, please do so because I have more leeway on TikTok. I can post more freely on TikTok than I can on YouTube. But yeah, so I gotta run, but I'll be back soon. Thank you everybody for tuning into this live stream. Thank you for your continued support. And I'm out. Peace, many